Hey, what's up? Good morning. This is Derek Crabb, another History of Comics on Film segment with picture-in-picture commentary. Again, just to reiterate, this is the 1960s decade, what I like to consider the second season of the History of Comics on Film. And this is on the Filmation segments of Hawkman. This is kind of interesting because this is one of the few segments, it kind of adheres to the comic, but a lot of it just kind of goes off and does its own thing. It's almost like somebody looked at the outside of a Hawkman comic and somebody told them a couple things. Like the guy's name was Carter Hall, and, he was a space cop. But then the rest of it's kind of like, oh, hey, he's got his pet bird, and, he doesn't have his wife, and he's got his Electro Claw, and I'm kind of like, Electro Claw, and then, of course, here I couldn't help but make the parallel to Crimzeek, because it totally reminded me of Crimzeek, also, the Absolute Justice had just aired, so I felt compelled to include one of the only live-action versions of Hawkman. And luckily, I guess the same thing, the not only the Justice League episodes, but the Brave and the Bold stuff, too. And here it gets a little weird because I was trying to adhere to the whole, stick to Hawkman thing. And so I didn't mention Herotalic, the kind of anagram Hawkman guy from the final season of Justice League, the whole movie Starcross thing. But I did kind of jump back and forth between Silver Age and Golden Age Hawkman. It's kind of like, to me, I mentioned both of them because they kind of look the same. The designs aren't all that different. And I know that in pre-Crisis there were two different characters and stuff like that. Especially the whole space dynamic. It's like one's the archaeologist and one's the outer space beat cop. It has the more science fiction vibe. But I figured I wouldn't get much of a chance to talk about that anywhere else. And so I just decided to go into it. I remember Hawkman from the Super Friends cartoon. And I can't say, it's funny, I don't remember too much of the Filmation Hawkman cartoon. I don't know that ended up making its way into the VHS Superpowers tapes or anything like that. So I can't say I committed all those to memory or anything. I think once they started airing on USA, some of those episodes started showing up more. But I remember always being sort of fascinated or kind of surprised by his claw here. Because I'm kind of like, dude, man's pulling a Wolverine, they gave him a little claw to claw out or whatever. I'm more used to, him having the mace or whatever else. So yeah, he had kind of weird powers in this, where he had his radar vision and, the claw, which they kept giving him different names, electro beams and repello rays, and so there weren't any real Hawkman villains to speak of. It's like, I know the main, it's like Biff and Shadow Thief and, all the, number one, number two most well-known villains. And of course the superhero roast came in handy for a lot of these characters because, again, regardless of the quality, a lot of these were the first live-action appearances of any of these guys. Flash, Green Lantern, and Hawkman. And you got to admit, the guy's in pretty good shape that was playing Hawkman. And then, of course, there's this goofy-ass Baby Ruth commercial, which I guess DC must have been done with Hawkman at that point, because I guess the famous thing is how Hawkman's origins are so confusing. You know, they tried so much to make him accessible, or sort of abandon the confusion. You know, the Golden Age, the space cop, the merging all the versions together. And by that point, with the Baby Ruth commercial, they must have been done with Hawkman at that point. Yeah, I don't know. This may be just something you're gonna get to learn about me, but I like science fiction. So to me, I don't see anything that's that confusing about the fact that he's a cop from outer space and that Thangarians are aliens. I mean, it seems pretty clear to me. Like, it doesn't seem that confusing. I guess what would get confusing is the whole, the Golden Age version was an archaeologist, and then you're trying to rationalize why they're both versions existing at the same time, and blah-blah-blah-blah-blah. And then, of course, you had Jeff Johns do the whole reincarnation thing, which is interesting, and, and it did make it a lot more palpable for people who maybe had problems with all the weird versions of Hawkman, having Native American history and all that other kind of stuff in a lot of the different runs. But yeah, so anyway, that's Hawkman, and please keep watching Blogspot and Comic Book Movies. Thanks.